Many Libyans believe the way out of the stagnant political situation is by holding legitimate elections. President Abdelhamid Dbeiba was brought in 2021 with the aim of establishing fair and legitimate elections in the hope a new permanent government can take the country into a better and stable future. This has so far eluded him. So what now? Will Libyans ever see democracy in their country? How can the main players overcome their differences? And are the political parties in the country ready for these political elections? Joining me to discuss this and more is Mohammed Abu Falgha, a researcher at Princeton University, policy director at the National Front, and policy outreach manager at Arab Barometer. Thank you very much for being here with us today. I think to start the discussion, just to give our audience a brief context of where Libya is at the moment politically, if you can tell us maybe who the main players are and how do they relate to each other?
First of all, thank you for having me. What we have today in Libya is a polarized political system. You have two legislative bodies, the High Council of State in Tripoli and the House of Representatives in the east. Today, unfortunately, you have two governments. We have the government of national unity, and then you have the Hamad government in the east. The central bank is probably the only one who's kind of unified today, but everything else is almost polarized, and it's been the same since 2022. And in a sense, it's today similar to what it used to be before 2021 as well, with all the bipolarity of institutions. Unfortunately, we have a status quo, so those in power are getting stronger by the day. There's no real push to drive them out of their offices, and this is the main reason that's hindering a change in Libya, which is all the keys to the change, to the political change in the country, is given to those who are benefiting from the status quo. So it's a kind of a catch-22 in a sense.
So the people who rule in Tripoli, they're the national unity government under President Dbeiba, and those who rule in the east are under General Haftar's rule. We can say that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Hamad government is just an image, but the real power lies with the Haftar, and
so
Haftar.
The country is split in two.
Exactly. That's why I say it's kind of similar to what it used to be before 2021. Because what we had in 2021 is an effort to really unify the government, at least have one legislative body with two chambers, and having one unity government. Unfortunately, that didn't last more than a year. But now we're going back to square one, which is having Haftar controlling the east, basically moving the chess pieces as he pleases, and in the west you have Dbeiba as prime minister. You have the Mnifi, who's supposed to be the president of the presidential council that encompasses the entire country, but isn't really. Doesn't really, or the council itself doesn't really have much authority over most of the country. So again, we're going back to this division that's been happening prior to 2021.
Now, the war that occurred in 2019, Haftar's he tried to take over Tripoli. That failed, and after that, there's been a push from the west to create elections in the country, because that was seen as the kind of the final solution, because no political solution before that occurred, nor any military solution. So, what does the West want now from these different fractions?
I think the West and the international community in general are in a very difficult and confusing position. In a sense, of course, on paper they would like to see elections, because that has the potential to lead the country to stability, And also for these governments, for the Western government, especially the democratic ones or the supposedly democratic ones, that would give them a kind of a credit with their publics to have delivered some sort of a change or success in a country like Libya, and that goes directly or especially more importantly for the European countries. But at the same time, with elections comes a lot of unpredictability, a lot of unclear future. So that's why we see some of the Western capitals are trying to kind of maintain this status quo in reality with meetings with those who are hindering any real effort towards election or towards change. But at the same time, you see them publicly talking about, their desire to, or their will to support election, to support democratization and all that stuff. So it's a very difficult and very confusing situation between what they want to deliver and what they kind of fear from the solution that they could push for. Add to that, I think there's another layer to it, which is to really push for elections in a difficult or complicated situation like Libya's. You have to spend a lot of political capital. You have to spend a lot of diplomatic capital, and a lot of these Western states are not really willing to do that. And the prime example is the U.S. U.S. has been talking about holding election. They're calling for elections in the country, but they're not really ready to invest and spend any effort or make any effort really to make that happen.
Now, in 2021, there was an attempt to hold elections in December, but that failed. Can you just briefly give our audience a picture of what happened then?
Yeah, so the agreement was to hold presidential and parliamentary election on December 24th of 2021. There were several factors that led to basically delaying the election indefinitely. The main reason, according to the head of the High National Electoral Election Commission, Imad Al-Sayah, was the electoral laws. Because electoral laws, if you remember, were issued by Aqila Saleh individually around September of 2021, so just a few months before the supposed date for election. And those electoral laws were very flawed. They weren't. I don't want to say they weren't legitimate, but there were so many issues with these laws, which led to what we saw happen in October and in November, when candidates start running for election, and then we saw all the issue with the courts. People basically protesting against one candidate and another, to a point where the HNAC couldn't really announce a real list or a legitimate list of candidates till before the date of the election. So all these issues, of course.
What were some of the electoral laws? What were some of them that were problematic?
So the presidential election laws were the problematic ones. The parliamentary, not so much. I think the key aspects of conflict were the requirements to run for presidency. One of them was allowing military officers to run. Another one allowing basically those with dual citizenship to run, and of course the agreement that was agreed on earlier as part of the Libyan political dialogue forum stated that the electoral laws need to be decided or agreed on between the High Council of State and the House of Representatives, but that didn't really happen. The High Council of State did not agree on the electoral laws that Aqila Saleh issued. And a lot of members of the parliament also came out protesting these laws, saying that they didn't really vote on these drafts. So there were a lot of legal issues in terms of the way that these laws were passed, and in the substance of these laws there were a lot of disagreements. And in a country like Libya, when you're trying to run or hold presidential elections, a consensus must be had before you can lead the country to presidential election. In my own personal view, I think it was that was intentional. All the issues that were input into the electoral laws were intentional to basically delay the entire election, and therefore delay the parliamentary election. Again, we're entrusting a change with those who benefit the least from the change. So when you ask the parliament to issue electoral laws that would lead the parliament itself to its end, expect that they would basically delay as much as possible. They would create all sorts of obstacles to that. Basically, that started from before 2021, when there was this insistence on holding simultaneous presidential and parliamentary election. As we saw in 2021, there were no issues with the parliamentary electoral laws. I think people generally agree with these laws. They're not high stakes, so it's easy to agree on. But the presidential election, not only the electoral laws, but there are bigger issues than just the electoral laws when it comes to presidential elections. In political science, we learn about zero-sum games and how dangerous they are in fragile states like Libya. What zero-sum game means that if you play a political game, let's say if you hold elections and the winner is gonna win everything and the loser is gonna lose everything, that's a zero-sum game, because how much I win is how much you lose. And that's exactly the situation in Libya with the presidential election. You have, at least, or we had in 2021, we had three major factions within the country, and three major leading candidates also. We have Haftar in the east, we have Dbeiba in the west, and we have Saif al-Islam coming out and deciding that he wants to run in the south. With all these three leading figures, their popularity is not really measured, but you would think that they have a strong popular base in the respective regions, right? And when you try to hold presidential elections with this kind of state, with this kind of situation, you can't really expect Haftar to basically say that, okay, whoever wins, I'm gonna just stop doing what I'm doing. I'm gonna cede control of the east and just go back home. And you can't expect Dbeiba to also hand over the power to his main rival like Haftar or Saif al-Islam. So when you're trying to hold presidential election that would take power from these leading figures, right, without really having any guarantees that each one of them will accept the results, then you're playing a dangerous game. Because back in 2021, and it's the same situation today, in Libya you have no established institutions, you have no organized popular base or popular movement, and you have no foreign interest or foreign support to stabilizing the country. None of the foreign actors who are actively working or intervening in Libya is ready to be like, we are fully invested in stabilizing the country, so we're gonna do whatever it takes to make sure everyone accepts the results of the election. You have none of these three key components of stabilizing the situation on the day after the election. You have no way to force Beiba or Haftar or Saif to accept the results. Therefore, you're playing a very, very dangerous game, because you can hold elections today, but that doesn't mean that the whoever you elected is going to be president tomorrow, because if Beiba wins, he's not going to control over the east or the south. If Saif al-Islam wins, you have issues with internal and external actors, and the same goes for Haftar. So it's a very, very delicate matter. Again, combining or insisting on combining presidential election with parliamentary election, when you fully know that presidential election cannot really happen, that means you can't really have parliamentary elections, which means the parliament and the High Council of State are going to stay put, nothing is going to change, and you continue in a political impasse indefinitely.
So since then, Dbeiba has promised elections, and he's gone, and his opponents will say he's been acting like a permanent president to the country. Has he actually put forward something that will bring up elections, or has he just has everyone just kind of settled for the status quo?
I think the latter is true.
It's true.
Everyone's comfortable today. Those in power are comfortable in what they have, because any move they would make today might threaten whatever they have, whatever they're controlling. If Beiba makes any move, he might lose the government, he might lose the power that he has, and the same is true for Haftar. I think Beiba probably wasn't against holding election in 2021. Probably he hoped that they wouldn't happen, but that doesn't mean that he actively worked against holding elections. But I don't think he's serious about having elections, because again, the moment we have elections, Beiba is gone, because unless he wins the presidency, which is
at risk.
It's very difficult.
Losing his position.
Right. And if we go back to the early months in 2022, if you remember, he started a push towards parliamentary elections around May of 2022, and that was a kind of a reaction, because the parliament at that time created a new government and put Fathi Bashagha as its prime minister. So Beiba, in a sort of a reaction, started pushing for parliamentary elections, and he created the committee of returning the election to the people, basically. And if you remember, that committee worked for a few weeks, for a few months, and then it just disappeared. And in my mind, I think Beiba realized at some point that parliamentary elections are as dangerous to his power as presidential election. So that's why he dropped the ball. That's why I don't think he's serious about holding election. Probably he's not as actively hindering election as others. For example, Aqil Saleh at some point. But if we were to push again for election, he might get wary, and he might start actively working against that.
Okay, so one of the reasons why the EU convoy recently resigned was because of this, the idea that everyone is not pursuing elections and everyone's happy with the status quo. A new UN convoy has been replaced. Stephanie Khoury, I think her name is. What should she do, or what should be her aim now, and how should she get on with bringing up elections?
So Bathory resigned almost a month ago, right? And looking back at when he was appointed as special envoy, I didn't think that he would accomplish much, because first, if you remember, he was appointed mainly because he was African. There were some states like China and Russia that were pushing for an African envoy, and at some point they were like, we just need an African envoy. We had Sabri Abu Qadoum, the Algerian envoy, who was he was Algerian candidate. He was in the front runner for the appointment of the special envoy, and then Egypt and some other countries were like, we don't want, he's Algerian, we don't want him, because as you know, each envoy comes, his country of origin would have a greater impact on him than others. So they were like, we'll bring this Abdullah Batili, who is an experienced politician from Senegal. Senegal doesn't really have any intervention or any connection, any real connections to Libya at this stage. So would bring him, he will just spend his time there and try to accomplish as much as he can. That's the first reason. The second reason, none of the permanent members of the Security Council strongly supported Abdullah Batili for what he wanted to do for his vision. So these are the two main reasons why I personally didn't really think that he would accomplish much. And then, if you remember last year, around February, and in his statement to the Security Council on February 27, 2023, he announced the High Steering Committee. And then a few days later, he came out and kind of backtracked, and he was like, he tried to explain it as something else. In the following two statements to the Security Council, there was no mention at all of the High Steering Committee. So he just came out on February announcing this idea, and people got excited, and people were like, okay, now something is gonna change, because the steering committee is kind of similar to the committee of the 75 in 2020, 2021. So that might take a bit, some of the powers invested into the High Council of State, the Parliament, the Government of National Unity, and all those actors. And we'll have a steering committee that could actually comprise of others, who could actually make something different. But Batili just completely dropped the ball on his project, and whatever he was doing between February and his resignation, so a year and almost 3 months, he had no vision. He had almost no vision. The only thing that he proposed was the meeting between the five actors, but that wasn't really something that could happen, because even representatives of those five key actors didn't meet till after long weeks of negotiations, let alone having Beiba, Haftar, Takala, Agila, and Al-Nifi meeting in one room. I think the key issue that faced Batili in his work in Libya is the status quo and how powerful the actors who were in power are. He had no support, no external support, basically to kind of institute a new form of a committee, or a new a dialogue forum or something like that. Without the foreign support, without the international support, a special envoy can't really do anything. First, when it comes to Stephanie Khoury, I'm a bit more optimistic, just because of her background. I mean, she's American. You would expect the Americans to be more supportive of her than they were with Abdullah Batili. Kind of something similar, a similar dynamic to what happened with Stephanie Williams. There are rumors that Stephanie Khoury was brought in basically to replace Batili from the beginning. There were other rumors that he was pressured to resign to allow Stephanie Khoury to basically lead the political effort. As you know, you can't really appoint a new special envoy without an agreement in the Security Council, but for the deputy, you just need the signature of the General Secretary, or the Secretary General of the UN. So Stephanie Khoury has the potential to do better than Batili. I think again she's gonna face the same obstacles if she approaches the Libyan dilemma with the same mentality of basically expecting the powerful actors today to come to their senses and to cede power and to come together to the table and negotiate, I think she would be going the wrong way. The better option, in my opinion, is to work more with political parties, with civil society organizations, with actors who are outside the authority today, to create a sort of continuous pressure and momentum against those in power, to push towards a new dialogue and a new agreement, a new political agreement that takes lessons from the previous two agreements, doesn't repeat the same mistakes that happened in 2015 and 2021, and try to move the country past the polarized system that we have today. They should try to move past the House of Representatives and the High Council of State, and try to come together into one comprehensive political agreement that could lead to stability in the future.
Okay, so that's the political situation. If we can talk now about the electorate, then the work you do. Well, I think the first time I saw you was in central Tripoli, where you had an event about raising awareness. And you said about Stephanie Khoury being she should be active with the grassroots movements. Mm-hmm. So what role do they play? I mean, are Libyans engaged with them? How do you engage with Libyans and get in raising? Because you said democracy is sort of a vision more than just a political philosophy. So
it's a culture that you build over time.
So how do you do that? In a country where democracy has never really existed.
Yeah. So again, the Libyan dilemma is multifaceted. When it comes to political parties and civil society organizations, or civil society in general, you have major issues, major difficulties too. I'm going to talk about political parties because that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm part of. Political parties today, they don't really have a historic basis or strong background.
Heritage,
Exactly. There's no heritage of political parties in the country. I mean, the only example we have was around the independence era. And that was just they were a different kind of political parties. They were political parties that were working towards independence. They weren't in power, so they weren't really fighting over power. They had their visions, they had their considerations, but that's different from the situation today. Having or lacking this heritage is a problem in different ways. First, in the parties themselves, there are no established rules. There are no established customs and traditions within these institutions. They are almost all of them are new institutions. Maybe if we consider one or two exceptions of parties that were at some point part of the opposition to the Gaddafi regime, for example, those might have some customs, they have some ideas, some principles, some visions, some history, but almost all others are new institutions. To build new institutions, you need the culture, right? You need to create this culture of political partyism in the country, to basically have to improve the skills of members of the political party, but also to convince the public to either join or support your political party or the other political party. We don't have all this, so it's difficult. You're trying to build something new and trying to convince people of it at the same time. You're trying to have a strong institution and have a vision with internally and externally at the same time. So it's a very delicate situation. On the other hand, with the public, they saw no political parties, almost period. I mean, besides those who were alive around the independence era, none of the Libyans today have seen political parties working in the country. So to convince them that political parties are good is a difficult situation in itself. It's a very difficult mission, Add to that the weakness of the current political parties that's not really very convincing, you know. But in my view, the way forward for Libyans and for political parties is to work through these institutions to improve them from within. Because if I sit outside and watch political parties work today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, they might improve, but might as well in 20 years they would be the same. You know, the only way forward is to work within and to improve. And this is especially for the youngsters, especially for youth. Political parties have a lot of advantages, but today in Libya, as youth, as youngsters, we have a better advantage or bigger advantage of actually building something within these political parties. We can contribute to building the culture and at the same time building our own heritage, our own personal stories basically. Political parties are very important to the solution of the Libyan situation. I describe what's happening in Libya today as a sort of a pre-political society. Libya today is a sort of pre-political society. Pre-political society is a society where politics is not really exercised through political ideas or political visions. It's exercised through basically groups or communities that are not of choice. So, for example, we work in Libya today as, let's say, Masrata is one political unit, Tajura is another political unit, Amazigh are a political unit. All these are not groups of choice. You don't choose to be Masrati, you don't choose to be Tajuri, you don't choose to be Amazigh. All these are predestined, you know. This is the pre-political society. You work as a tribe, as a city, as a religious group, as an ethnic group, as a racial group, and the main component or the main idea that brings these pre-political groups together is not a political idea. What connects me to another Masrati, for example, is not our political vision. It's just because we both live in Masrata, or we were born there. We were both born, Amazigh or Arab or whatever, right? So these are not political units. These are not political groups. When you work or when you try to engage in a political game or in politics with these units, these pre-political units, you're not going to have a political engagement. You're going to have an engagement that centers your own interest, your group's interest. What's the interests of Amazigh, Misratis, Janubis, whatever.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because a lot of Libyans, the problem they might have with parties, and they have a very suspicious conscious about parties in general, is that they're looking for their personal interests rather than the country's interests. If somebody's coming to them and saying, "Vote for me," why should we vote for you? So
this is true. This is true. But the difference between political parties and these subnational pre-political units or groups is that a political party could have someone or people from all different groups. So the interests of these groups together or combined, they could actually lead to the interest of the general public. But if you take a tribe or a city and try to basically take care of their interest, you're not going to benefit the others. You're just going to benefit this group.
Yeah.
Right? But a political party, as much as it can benefit itself, is going to benefit the entire population, the entire country. Or at least this is what's supposed to happen. I say this as a member of a political party, bearing in mind all the shortcomings of the current parties that we have in the country. But again, the only way to improve is to work from within these political parties, because they're absolutely instrumental to a positive change in the country. In my view, Libya has been going through a vicious cycle of war and divisions and all that stuff. You start with the conflict, you move to a conflict leads to the emergence of a new idea, new identities, or re-emergence of old identities. You start to remember once a war happens, you start to remember all the stuff that's been basically distinguishing you from the attackers, from the other side, right? And that leads to reinforcement of our pre-political divisions. Once a war happens, I'm more Maserati than I used to be before the war, right?
Yeah.
And that keeps going on. And all of these pre-political units that we're trying to play politics with, they can't really work in a conflict. So as soon as a small tension happens, you're gonna go to war. Because if you think about it, if something happens between one tribe and another, and a tension rises, it's gonna be considered as a threat, as an existential threat to each tribe. So you're gonna go to war immediately. There's no possibility for negotiation or for discussion or for dialogue and all that stuff. That's the vicious cycle that Libya is going through. And one way to break this cycle is basically to empower political parties, to work within political parties, to improve their work. So once tensions kind of rise, you go back to your political party, and you know that you could engage with the other party, right? Instead of going back to your tribe or your city or your village or whatever, you go to your political unit. And this is the better way. This is a more developed way of playing politics, basically. Another way, of course, to do that is to basically end the conflict and the tension, and that's through transitional justice. But that's a totally different, not totally different conversation, but it's a different conversation.
I want to just talk about the East for a bit, then, because you bring in political parties, and it's well documented in the East that wouldn't ever be accepted. So, how big of a rock do you think Haftar and the East are in that movement towards a transition to a democratic state? I mean, it's good saying, okay, we can do this and that, and it works maybe here in Tripoli, but because you have another power that's not willing to compromise, how do you see that as an obstacle?
I think it's the same obstacle to peace generally, and to election, and to stability. You have one actor who is intent on basically taking over the entire country. At the moment they can't, or he can, so he's basically taking over a part of the country. But going back, for example, before 2014, before the emergence of Haftar as a strong figure, political parties were very active in the East. Generally, I mean, you have the urban centers who are very politically active as well. So it's the same obstacle, right? You have Haftar. He's not gonna allow elections to happen. He's not gonna allow political parties to work too. So it's the same obstacle, I think. Besides, if you remove Haftar, for example, from the picture, it's not gonna be very different. Of course, the social structure or the social fabric in the East is slightly different from the West. But we've seen before a possibility of working through political parties. That's why I say that. That's why I talk about this vicious cycle, right? Because if we look back at 2012, 2013, and the first half of 2014, we were engaging in politics through the General National Congress and through political parties within the Congress. I mean, if you look for any snippet from the news in 2012, 2013, 2014, all the political stuff you will see is talking about, party A, party B, party C, and that's the motive, that's the driver of politics at that time, right? if you look today, it's very different. It's a very different picture. You see city A, city B, tribe A, tribe B, and all these, again, subnational pre-political units that are working but the politics. And those emerged not because Libyans are really intent on bringing these groups back, but they come as a result of the conflict, of the war, of what happened in the east from 2014, 2015, and what happened to the west starting from 2014. This conflict, this war, these clashes, they bring back what we kind of put aside between 2012 and 2014, and they bring them back as kind of like the main, our main sort of safety nets, if you will, and our main sort of protection, because within your tribe, within your city, you're more protected than within your political party, right? So these identities, these subnational groups, are a direct result or they directly come from war, from conflict. That doesn't mean that they don't exist before the conflict, but they're not used politically before the conflict or before the war.
Now, the man on the street, how does he view what you're saying, and how does he view future potential elections in the country? Do you think the normal Libyan has hope for them, or does he has the feeling of giving up kind of taken over?
Hope is very difficult. It's easy to be hopeless. You just give up. It's much easier than being optimistic than being hopeful. And hopefulness or hope is not really a rational thing. Like if you look at the country today, if you look at Libya, on paper there's no reason for you to be hopeful, right? And I would imagine that the majority of people are feeling a bit hopeless, pessimistic about the future, and I can't blame them. If you go through all that's people are going through, the issues, the economic difficulties that they're facing, the current state of the healthcare system, the education system, the public sector, all that stuff, you can't help but feel hopeless, right? I think people generally would love to see an election happen. The fact that 2.8 million people registered to vote in the election is
proof.
Is a major thing. It's not easy to convince all these people to register again to vote after all these years that we've been through. I think in our recent in a recent survey in 2022, our barometer conducted a survey in Libya, and around 60% of people said that they intend to vote if elections were to be held. And 60% is very close to the 2.8 million people. That's kind of the same percentage. So I think people would love to see a change. Again, despair is widespread, and you can't really blame the ordinary people for that, because in the street it's not looking very the future is not looking very 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 bright. And again, from the 2022 survey, optimism about the future, about the economic future, has been going down since 2014. And again, you can't really blame people when they go to the bank and they have to stay or to stand in a queue for hours. It's hard to be hopeful. But at the same time, this is one of the responsibilities of political parties and of civil society, is to never stop pushing for a positive change. It's easier also for political parties and for civil society to fall into the trap of despair, but this is what should distinguish basically the active citizens, those in civil society, those in political parties. This is what should distinguish them from everyday citizens who are less, I don't want to say less interested in politics, but would prefer to be less interested in politics. Because in Libya today, it's very difficult to detach yourself from politics just because of how much we're affected on daily basis by it.
Do you think political parties or civil societies, like you said, some of them, do they engage directly with the public? I mean, opening up hospitals, opening up schools, do they, like they say, win the hearts of the people? Do they try and do that, or are they main focus just on advertising a sort of democratic?
We have a major problem with political parties, especially in terms of reaching out to the public. Unfortunately, one of the obstacles that is facing political parties today is the finance aspect, like the financial means, which prevents a lot of parties from basically working with the public and all that stuff. But the other side, which is something that I blame on the parties themselves, is that they are almost fully engaged in the political game rather than policies. So we have a lot of policy issues. Issues with the healthcare again, issues with the education, with the subsidies, for example, but parties are not really engaging in these topics, which causes a lot of the public to dismiss political parties because they're not really
they're not seeing work on the ground.
Exactly, yeah, and political parties, even in their statements and in their media, they're not engaging with what concerns the public immediately. They're focused on politics, on the prime minister, government creation, negotiations between the parliament, high council of state, all that stuff, while sidelining the more issues the issues that are more important to the public. For example, earlier this year we had Prime Minister Dbeiba talk about the removal of the subsidies, and this is one of the major components to any Libyan households. I mean, you need subsidies for transportation, for electricity, and all that stuff. So if something as major as removal of subsidies comes up, and you don't really engage the public with it, it's very hard to convince people to listen to you if you're not talking about what they care about.
Mm.
So this is one of the many obstacles that are facing political parties today.
Maybe finally, if there is no path towards elections and the status quo remains, how do you see the future of Libya?
I mean, if the status quo remains, the future is grim, unfortunately. But I don't think we could see the current status quo continue much further. With the current economic conditions today, which has been worse than they've been last year and the year before, I think at some point people will reach a point where enough is enough, and not just the public, but even externally, you would have some foreign actors who would be fed up with the situation, because currently what you have is a political group or political elite that has been basically sucking the country dry, and at some point we might face a point where they have no resources anymore to continue basically preying on the country. I'm a bit optimistic. Again, like, optimism is difficult, is more difficult than hopelessness, but one must remain optimistic. I heard a Palestinian writer before say that despair is a luxury I can't afford, which is something is very true. And Edward Said also said that one must always be capable of being optimistic, because without it, you might as well die. There's no point if you're very if you're hopeless. Basically that's it for you. So I think I think there is a change coming. I hope that's not wishful thinking on my part, but I think a change is.
Do you think a military solution will ever be a possibility?
As a solution, it's never gonna be a possibility in a country like Libya. I hate to.
But do you think that it might come? I mean, whether it provides a solution or not. But do you think that
we might see a new military encounter. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the only way to prevent conflict is to have all sides of the conflict realize that they can't benefit more from the conflict than they were without it. As they say, war is a diplomacy by other means, or the continuation of politics by other means. But in Libya today, I'm afraid that hasn't been the case yet. I mean, some sides, for example, Haftar, I don't think he has realized yet that he can't really take over the country by military force. And up to that point, the possibility of a military encounter is still up there. But generally, I think. Again, I'm hopeful that a change is coming, and in my view, that the first way to change the situation in Libya would start with a comprehensive political agreement that leads to a parliamentary election. I don't think that Libya today should have presidential elections for the reason that we mentioned earlier, but the parliamentary election could be very beneficial because the first. For different reasons. First, it will unify the legislative body, so we would have no issue between the parliament and the High Council of State. The second point, it would allow for the unification of the executive authority, so we don't have two governments anymore, and that then they could also organize the situation between the executive power and the central bank and all the economic and fiscal stuff. After that, we definitely need to jumpstart the transitional justice process, because without transitional justice, we're gonna be swimming in the same lake for years, if not decades. Without proper transitional justice process, it's very probable and very likely that we would have a recurrence of violence in the coming future. After that, of course, you need to engage in a community dialogues to lead to a constitution, and that might be the kind of like the cherry on the cake. To have a constitution that's agreed on by the majority of people, and that basically hold the consensual power of the public. Without these, we might very easily slide into a recurrence of violence. I think one of the key aspects of a positive change in the future is the transitional justice, because without it, I think it's going to be a very thin ice. We're going to be walking on very thin ice, and in this context, it always comes to my mind what Martin Luther King said. It's like a lot of people prefer negative peace, which is the absence of tension, over positive peace, which is the presence of justice. And in Libya today, because of Libyan exceptionalism, if you will, because of our connection to our history, we need to have a transitional justice to basically cut ties with all these historical traumas and historical issues that we're kind of keeping deep down, and that we bring out every time we have a conflict with another group within the country.
Okay, well, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been very informative, and hopefully we'll see you again in the future.
Inshallah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.